ParshaCast.com presents.
Bruchim Habayim, welcome to the ParshaCast. On this week's episode, I explore the obligations, prohibitions, and meaning of Shabbat. It's Vayakhel Pekudei 5777. ParshaCast, assemble! Abraham Joshua Heschel called it our great cathedral in time. Achad Ha'am was quoted as saying, "More than the Jews have kept it has kept the Jews." We are talking about Shabbat on this week's ParshaCast, the 15th episode. I'm your host, Eitan Guten. For more information, check out ParshaCast.com, where you can find past episodes, sign up for the mailing list, or become a ParshaCast patron for $2 or more per month. So as I said, this week's episode is going to be all about Shabbat. What I'm going to do is first explore just what it is that we don't do on Shabbat. Then we're going to look at where those things come from. And finally, I'm going to take this one important phrase in our Parsha, in our Torah portion from this week, that is often interpreted as being related to prohibitions on Shabbat, and also link it to the meaning of Shabbat itself. Ready? Let's go. You know, when I was a kid, we had a record from this performer in the Hasidic world called Uncle Moishe. Lots and lots of Jews grow up with Uncle Moishe, and he has a very famous song where the character in the song is being asked to do various things on Saturday, but he won't. Why? Because he says, "Ain't gonna work on Saturday, ain't gonna work on Saturday, double, triple pay won't make me work on Saturday, ain't gonna work on Saturday, it's Shabbos Kodesh, it's the holy day of Sabbath." So most of us in the Jewish community grow up being taught that what we don't do on Shabbat is work. The problem here, though, is that it is twofold. First of all, there are plenty of Jews who work on Shabbat. I'm a Jewish educator. More than once, I've been paid for things I'm doing on Shabbat. In other words, I was technically working on Shabbat. That's the first problem. The second problem is that when it comes down to it, the word work is just simply the wrong word. In Hebrew, in the Torah, the word that we usually use to talk about the prohibitions on Shabbat is milacha. Now, the word milacha is very complicated. We don't entirely know what it means, especially since it's just one word that encapsulates everything or almost everything that we don't do on Shabbat. So instead of translating this word malacha, what I prefer to do is talk about how the rabbis of the Mishnah and then of the Talmud use the word. You see, the rabbis of about 2,000 years ago looked at the word malacha, looked at the Torah, looked at their practices that they had inherited from their ancestors, and they came up with 39 types of activities that are prohibited on Shabbat. 39. Almost every single thing the Jews today who keep Shabbat strictly will not do on Shabbat, almost every single one is on that list. I'll tell you later what the exception is, but almost every single thing that Jews today don't do, whether it's a Jew who won't use electricity on Shabbat, or it's a Jew who won't get in the car on Shabbat, okay, whatever it is that they won't do is somehow connected to this list. And by the way, for Jews who do use electricity on Shabbat or who do use their car on Shabbat but still consider themselves to be observant of Shabbat, their choices to do these things are based on arguments over just how we define what milacha is. So as I said, the rabbis came up with 39 categories of activities that are prohibited on Shabbat. Here they are: plowing, planting, reaping, gathering, threshing, winnowing, sorting, grinding, sifting, kneading, cooking, shearing, laundering, carding, dyeing, spinning, warping, setting up a loom, weaving, cutting fibers, tying, untying, sewing, tearing, trapping, slaughtering, skinning, curing the skin, smoothing the skin, scoring it, cutting it to size, writing, erasing, building something, demolishing something, putting out a fire, lighting a fire, completing an item, and moving something from one domain to another. So those are the 39 malachot, the 39 categories of prohibited work on Shabbat. Actually, the way that it's written about in the Mishnah, it's not 39, it's 40 minus 1, which will become important in just a moment. So what is this list? What does this list have to do with our parsha? Well, in order to understand what this list has to do with our parsha, I need to introduce a concept, and that concept is smichut parshiot. Smichut parshiot refers to one text being next to another text in the Torah, and interpreting what each text means, or what at least one of them means, by either what comes before or what comes afterwards. So, at the very beginning of this week's parsha, Moshe says to the people, and again, as usual, I'm reading from the Everett Fox translation of the Torah, Moshe assembled the entire community of the children of Israel. The word Vayakhel is assembled, and said to them, these are the words that Adonai has commanded to do them. For 6 days is melacha to be made. I'm replacing the word work in the translation with the word melacha, as we've been discussing it. So once again, for 6 days is melacha to be made, but on the 7th day there is to be holiness for you. Shabbat ceasing for Adonai. Whoever makes melacha on it is to be put to death. You are not to let fire burn throughout all your settlements on the Sabbath day. So our parsha opens with that statement, and that statement is immediately followed by all sorts of instructions for how to build the Mishkan. And this isn't the only place where that takes place. In fact, just a few chapters earlier, in chapter 31, something very similar happens, where instructions are being given for the Mishkan, for how to put together this tabernacle, and it is interrupted by the phrase, nevertheless, you shall keep my Sabbaths. So what do these connections mean? What are these connections all about? And what do they have to do with our list of 39 items? So there's a rabbi, Dr. Yoel Ben Nun, who's one of the founders of Yeshivat Har Etzion in Israel. And he's got this great post on a website called thetorah.com. It's a post that's adapted from some of his other work. And here's what he says. He says that this list of 39, first of all, where does the number 39 come from? He says, well, the Mishnah says that the number of categories that are prohibited on Shabbat is 40 minus 1. Well, what appears 40 times? There's two specific ways of conjugating the word milacha, okay, the word that is often translated as work. There are 40 times when those two conjugations show up in the Torah. So the Mishnah is working with a list of 39, which is those 40 minus 1. So where else might we get that number from? Another choice of where we get this number from, and here's the one that he prefers, is that there were 39 categories of work, of labor, or of activity that went into the tabernacle itself, that went into the Mishkan. So there are these 39 types of activities, and parallel to those 39 that Moshe explicitly says in the Torah, Moshe told the people orally. In other words, Moshe made an oral tradition of the 39 categories of melacha that I just listed earlier. That the 39 categories of melacha are not point-for-point parallel to the 39 types of activity done in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle. Instead, to match those 39 types of activities, Moshe gave the people an oral tradition of the 39 things we can't do on Shabbat. And that oral tradition lasted for so long, for over 1,000 years. It lasted so long that in the Mishnah, which was published just over 1,800 years ago, that in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was able to list those 39 categories. Great, done, perfect. We know why we don't do things on Shabbat. Of course, there might be some issues with this interpretation, and there might be other ways of interpreting why Shabbat is directly linked to the construction of the tabernacle. And I'll get to that in a moment. But first, I have a quick message for everybody. It says in Pirkei Avot, it says in Mishnah Avot, which is sometimes translated as Ethics of the Fathers, Im ein kemach ein Torah, im ein Torah ein kemach. If you don't have sustenance, if you don't have food on your plate, you can't have Torah. But if you don't have Torah, you can't have sustenance. Now, as a Jewish educator, I live this. My income as a professional comes from teaching. It comes from tutoring. It comes from consulting. It comes from going out and appearing in congregations, and it comes from sharing my thoughts on the parsha or other folks' thoughts on the parsha with you every week. So if you'd like to help turn my Torah, my teaching, into kamach, into sustenance, please visit parshacast.com and click on the orange banner that says become a patron. And if you become a patron for $2 or $4 or $10 or more per month, you will be helping me to fulfill this idea from Pirkei Avot, imein kamach in Torah, imein Torah en kamach. If you don't have sustenance, you can't have Torah, you can't learn, you can't teach. But if you're not learning and teaching, you can't have sustenance. And I thank you in advance for all of you who help me with my family's sustenance. So as I said before, I think there are some issues with linking these 39 categories of milachot, these 39 forbidden types of work on Shabbat, directly with our parsha, directly with the building of the Mishkan. So there's two problems. First of all, most of the interpretations of this list of 39 depends on Moshe having given the generation that left Egypt this list, and that list surviving all the way to Mishnaic times, surviving through revolution, surviving through civil wars, surviving through exiles. That this exact list of 39 survived intact until the times of the Mishnah, when they could write it down 1,800 years ago. That's just beyond. That just doesn't make sense to me. The second reason that I doubt this idea is that neither the Mishnah nor the Talmud seems that concerned with linking this list directly to Moshe or linking this list directly to the Mishkan, to the tabernacle. In fact, this idea that the 39 activities on the list have to be directly linked to the Mishkan, to the tabernacle, just comes from one rabbi, Rabbi Hanina Bar Chama, who's involved in a discussion of where the 39 might come from. And he's the one who says that these 39 activities are related to a list of 39 that are found in the building of the Mishkan. So if reminding the people to keep the prohibitions of Shabbat right around all the instructions for the tabernacle, for the Mishkan, isn't about linking those prohibitions to the activities of the tabernacle, then what's it doing here? Why is it here? Well, I turn back to our text, and our text refers to this day not just as Shabbat, and not just as a day when things are prohibited, but as Shabbat, Shabbaton, Ladonai. It is a day of ceasing from things for God. It is for Adonai. There's something about Shabbat that's linked to Adonai. So here's what I think. It's very, very easy to get caught up in the detail of ritual. It's incredibly simple to do so. And it's very easy to replace a connection to Hashem with a connection to the ritual instead. There's a danger that the ritual itself just becomes another idol. That ritual, all these practices in the temple, all these practices of the Mishkan, become another golden calf, which is exactly what the people were just punished for. Now, we can't be focused on Hashem. We can't be focused on God every moment of every day of every week. Okay, in fact, most, if not all of the activities that we're prohibited from doing on Shabbat are pretty essential to a well-functioning economy, and a well-functioning economy is essential to a well-functioning society. And remember, the Torah is not just about individuals, it's about building a Jewish society, a society that can remain sovereign, that can remain independent in the land of Israel. So for 6 days, we do all these things. We do all these things because they're essential to the functioning of society. So then why are we prohibited from doing these things on that 7th day? We're prohibited from doing them on that 7th day to remember that Hashem gave us life, to remember that Hashem freed us from Egypt, to remember that Hashem isn't the altar, Hashem isn't the sacrifice, Hashem isn't the menorah, Hashem isn't the ritual, but instead Hashem is all around us. Shabbat is our opportunity to pause and remember, and to pause and renew our special relationship with God every single week. And what a gift it is. On that note, I'd like to wish you a Shabbat Shalom. I'm Eitan Guten, and this is the ParshaCast.